One of the subjects that I am particularly keen to talk about, mainly from the keynote stage, well, it used to be from the keynote stage, now from the V keynote stage, is the idea of cognitive diversity. And I've spoken about that before, so I'm not going to repeat myself, but in terms of what that means. But just to give you some examples that I have found remarkably helpful. I grew up in a segregated society. I grew up in a place where one part of the country was very separate from the other, and I grew up in Scotland. And it was a religious type of segregation. So you had basically, and I'm talking very generally here, but you had the Catholics and you had the Protestants. So they had the two groups that were segregated from one another. Pretty wicked, really, because you had faith schools, which I still think are pretty horrible things, and I know that's a view that not everyone agrees with, but I think they're pretty horrible because they just create division with children when they're at a very vulnerable and impressionable age. But so I grew up with this prejudice against all organised faith. I mean, it's something that I maintain uh, in some respects. However, what I've learned is that it was a foolish thing to just dismiss it out of hand, because what I've found in the last 5 years, when I've been working with larger groups and working with people from across the world, is that for me to not listen to that, for me not to consider certain elements of those faiths, is to miss a point. So I've studied many of the faiths now to some degree, and there's a few of those that I particularly like. I mean, I love the Quakers. I think the Quaker movement, the based on friendship and coming together and groups, is terrific. And in fact, my friend Julian mentioned this just the other day, that he'd been exposed to it and found it very, very positive. Probably my two favourites, though, are the Jewish culture and Buddhism. I find Jewish culture's messages about family, about forgiveness, about, I mean, the whole notion of Shabbat, where the people of practicing Jewish culture come together to talk about how they are and talk about, what's worrying them, etc. I think that's a beautiful thing. Buddhist culture is another one that I find fascinating, and its focus on inner development, the inner work, what's going on in here and how we then express it, is fascinating. And there are a few writers in that space that I really enjoy, and I know that I'll come back to these in future videos. I've just started reading this one, actually, When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron, who I've been aware of her work for some time. I think she's over 80 now, and she's a Buddhist nun, and has written, gosh, she's written so many books. And this book was recommended by Krista Tippett on the terrific Faith Foundationed podcast On Being. So I always follow Krista's advice. When she said this was wonderful and life-changing, I thought, well, I'm going to have to read that. But so what's the point? Well, what I'm saying here is that even where you are part of a group, even where you are happy with that group and convinced that whether it's a political group, a faith group, even if it's a social group, one of the things that you could really benefit from, if my experience is anything to go by, is to look outside your group, and rather than to look for ways of not engaging with them, look for ways in which you can learn from them. Look for ways in which you can almost cherry pick the good stuff and put that into your mind and into your daily practice.